Yeah, Kevin, just wondering, did you see that there was a sideline confrontation that happened between Shedeur Sanders and Jeudy? And I know that that's part of football, that those kind of things do happen. But I'm just wondering, what you not only thought of that, but what do you think is kind of going on with Jeudy in this season where it's just not going for him the way that he would have expected, or that I guess you guys would have expected?
Yeah, I think, like you mentioned, Mary Kay, football is an emotional sport, and certainly you can, when you're a family like we are, you can have your disagreements. Sometimes they're for everybody to see. Sometimes it's behind closed doors, but like a family, we move on, we talk about it, so I'm not worried about it.
The Cleveland Browns' crushing 26-8 defeat to the San Francisco 49ers wasn't just another L in a season packed with disappointment. This was the moment when the carefully constructed facade came crashing down, when the truth about this broken franchise could no longer be hidden, and when Shedeur Sanders, the rookie quarterback who's been set up to fail from day one, finally stopped playing nice with the media and exposed what's really been happening behind closed doors in Cleveland. What Sanders said in this post-game press conference wasn't the usual coach-speak nonsense we're used to hearing. It was a calculated, surgical takedown of Kevin Stefanski's coaching decisions, a public indictment of the organization's failures, and a masterclass in how to call out your coaching staff without crossing the line into fine-worthy territory. Make no mistake, what happened in that press room was explosive. Shedeur Sanders looked directly into the cameras, spoke straight to the Cleveland faithful, and told them exactly who's responsible for this disaster without ever saying the names out loud. He talked about lacking chemistry with his teammates, missing crucial practice time, being denied first-team reps, and getting shut out of meaningful opportunities during rookie minicamp and training camp. He described being forced to practice with janitors and throw next to trash cans instead of getting real snaps with his actual teammates, making it impossible to build the timing and trust every NFL offense needs to function. Every sentence was carefully crafted. Every word carried weight. Every answer was a subtle but unmistakable shot at Kevin Stefanski and the coaching staff that's been sabotaging him since he arrived. When asked about the frustrating loss and the offense's struggles, Sanders could have gone with the standard "we need to execute better" or "we'll work harder in practice" cliches. Instead, he cut straight to the heart of the problem: time on task. He said, and this is critical to understanding his message, that success comes from being in those settings for a long period. It requires time, practice, and repetition. That's not some generic football platitude. That's a direct shot at the fact that he didn't get those reps, wasn't given that practice time, and was never put in position to build the chemistry and timing every NFL offense requires to function. He's telling anyone who listened that this loss isn't on him. The coaching staff failed to give him the tools and opportunities necessary to succeed. The part about being sent to the sidelines to throw to janitors and practice next to trash cans is particularly damning. It reveals the disrespect and negligence Sanders endured throughout training camp and the early season.
He's playing well. I wanted to say to him face to face, like, hey, I know I said some things in the past I probably shouldn't have, and I'm sorry. That's what I wanted to say to him. His response, Mike Robb, was ninja.
Ninja?
Yes, I'm using the word ninja. I'm just using the word ninja. I don't mess with you. And it was a curse word. And so I was like, all right. And then he repeated it. So I'll say it again. I'm sorry that I said you were a jag, just a guy who's an average wide receiver they use a first-round pick on that isn't doing anything. I hope today that you actually show up in a way that you haven't showed up in the last couple of years since they drafted you. So if you ever got a problem with Agent 89, I'm sorry for saying that you're an average wide receiver that they eventually will move on. And when teams call me and asking, should they trade for you, I will say no, don't trade for Jeudy because he's mentally unable to handle constructive criticism.
While other quarterbacks were getting first-team reps, working with the starting receivers, and developing timing in real practice situations, Shedeur Sanders was essentially being kept away from the actual offense, treated like he wasn't worth the coaching investment. That's not how you develop a franchise quarterback. That's how you ruin one. Kevin Stefanski claimed during training camp in the preseason that there was a legitimate quarterback competition in Cleveland. He told the media, the fans, and probably ownership that every quarterback would get a fair shot to earn the role. But Shedeur made it crystal clear in his post-game comments that this was complete fiction. There was never a real competition. Sanders never truly got a chance to prove himself with the first-team offense. There was never a fair evaluation process. It was all theater, all smoke and mirrors designed to give Stefanski cover for the decision he'd already made regardless of what happened on the field. Now we're seeing the consequences of that dishonesty play out in real time. Sanders is being asked to run an NFL offense, build chemistry with receivers, read defenses, and make split-second decisions, all without the practice time and repetitions that are fundamental to quarterback development. It's like asking someone to perform surgery without letting them go to medical school, or expecting a pilot to fly a plane without ever sitting in a cockpit. The setup for failure is so obvious and so egregious that it borders on coaching malpractice. When Sanders was asked directly about the incomplete pass to Jeudy on the opening drive, his response was incredibly revealing. He explained that he needs time to learn the speed and timing with his receivers, to understand distance and ball flight, and calibrate throws based on familiarity and repetition. Then he added, and this is the crucial part, it was just calculated off. On the surface, that sounds like he's taking responsibility for a bad throw. But listen to what he's actually saying. The calculation was off because he hasn't thrown to Jeudy enough in live situations to understand his speed and route running nuances, because he hasn't had sufficient practice reps to develop proper timing. That's an incredibly polite way of saying the coaching staff made a catastrophic decision. Sanders is essentially saying, I missed that throw because you didn't give me enough time to develop chemistry with these receivers. And that's not on me, that's on the coaches. He's owning the specific throw while making it crystal clear that the real responsibility for the miss lies with Kevin Stefanski and the organizational decisions that prevented proper preparation. The most powerful moment of the entire press conference came when Sanders said this wasn't a microwave thing and that it would take time for the offense to gel around him. He said, as athletes and teammates, we need to be able to get along and feel at ease with each other in any situation. It takes time. This team isn't going to be like a microwave. There will be some sparks here and there, but it will take time for everyone to get on the same page and build that chemistry. That statement is multifaceted, and every layer is a critique of how this organization has handled his development. First, he's setting realistic expectations, acknowledging that success won't be immediate given the circumstances. Second, he's explaining to fans why the offense looks disjointed and why so many plays break down. Third, and most importantly, he's pointing out that training camp, the preseason, and those crucial early weeks when quarterbacks and receivers build the foundation of their working relationship should have provided the time needed to develop that chemistry. By saying it takes time and then implicitly noting that time wasn't provided, he's exposing the fundamental flaw in Kevin Stefanski's quarterback development approach. He went even further in his critique when discussing players not being on the same page and lacking consistency. He said, a lot of the time when we're passing, we're not all looking at the same thing. Some guys aren't where we saw them in practice, like who lines up where if you put Jerry on this side or that side. All we have to do is be comfortable and make sure everything is the same. That's a quarterback describing a poorly coached offense. Players are confused about their assignments. There's uncertainty about alignments and responsibilities. The level of preparation and attention to detail isn't NFL caliber. When receivers aren't where they're supposed to be, when there's questions about alignments, when the quarterback and his pass catchers aren't seeing coverage the same way, that's a coaching failure. That's evidence of inadequate practice time, insufficient preparation, and a coaching staff not doing the basic work required to make an offense functional. Sanders is delivering this information diplomatically, but the message is unmistakable. Kevin Stefanski is responsible for this poorly coached, poorly prepared offense. The exchange about the fourth down play calls was particularly interesting because it showed Sanders' sophistication in navigating these media situations without getting himself in trouble. When a reporter tried to bait him into criticizing Stefanski's aggressive decisions on those failed fourth down attempts by asking if he liked the calls and the aggression, Sanders immediately recognized it as a trap question. He responded, "That's a rude question to ask if I think my coach made a good call," before pivoting to express gratitude for the opportunity to play and the trust the coaches showed in him. That response demonstrates remarkable political savvy for a 22-year-old rookie. He understood that directly questioning play calling would create headlines, damage his relationship with the coaching staff, and potentially harm his standing within the organization. So he sidestepped the question entirely, but in doing so, he actually drew more attention to the questionable play calls than a generic positive answer would have. By refusing to answer and calling the question inappropriate, he made it clear that those fourth down calls were indeed questionable. Everyone watching that exchange knows those calls were questionable, and everyone knows Sanders thinks so too, even though he wouldn't say it explicitly. The subtext running through Sanders' entire press conference is unmistakable. Kevin Stefanski has failed him. The coaching staff has not supported him. The organizational decisions made during training camp and the preseason have set him up for failure. He's being asked to execute an NFL offense without the preparation time, practice reps, and developmental resources that every successful quarterback receives. It's organizational malpractice. It's coaching negligence. And Sanders just made it clear to everyone without ever using those exact words. The comment about time on task being the most critical missing factor is particularly damning because it highlights something entirely within the coach's control. Coaches determine practice time allocation. Coaches decide who gets first-team reps. Coaches determine whether a rookie quarterback will have real opportunities to build chemistry with his receivers. Kevin Stefanski chose not to give Shedeur Sanders those opportunities throughout training camp. He chose to keep him away from the first-team offense. He claimed there would be a legitimate quarterback competition while ensuring it never actually happened. And now those choices are directly causing offensive dysfunction and lost games.
Browns fans should be furious about what Sanders revealed in this press conference. Finally, their franchise has a quarterback who can actually play, who can lead, who can be the long-term answer at the position. But that quarterback is being actively held back by nonsensical coaching decisions, by an organizational approach that prioritizes protecting the coaching staff's previous decisions over facilitating the young quarterback's development, and by a head coach who'd rather stick with his failed plan than admit he was wrong and course correct. The phrase coaching malpractice gets thrown around too casually in sports media, but it genuinely applies to what Kevin Stefanski has done with Shedeur Sanders' development. When you have a talented rookie quarterback, the absolute priority is giving him every opportunity to build chemistry with his offensive weapons, every developmental resource, every meaningful rep. That didn't happen in Cleveland. Instead, Sanders was sidelined, denied adequate practice time to develop the timing and trust that effective quarterback play requires, then thrown into games and expected to perform despite not being given the preparation necessary. When you compare how other organizations have handled rookie quarterback development, Cleveland's approach looks even more egregious. The Texans gave C.J. Stroud first-team reps immediately upon his arrival in Houston, provided comprehensive coaching support, and ensured he had maximum developmental opportunities. The result? Offensive Rookie of the Year and a playoff berth. Bryce Young received every developmental opportunity available when he arrived in Carolina. Despite the team's struggles, he got every rep possible and every resource the organization could provide. Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis before his injury had the Colts make it clear he was the starter and structure their entire approach around his development. Cleveland did none of that with Shedeur Sanders. They denied him a fair opportunity while pretending there was a competition. They kept him away from the weapons he'd need to build chemistry with later. They wasted critical training camp and preseason time that could have been used to establish the foundation for success. And now they're acting surprised that the offense isn't cohesive, the timing is off, and the chemistry isn't there? It would be almost comical if it weren't so damaging to a young quarterback's development and career trajectory. Sanders' comment about needing to trust his receivers and see things through the same lens is particularly powerful because it reveals a quarterback trying to build something without the proper foundation. Quarterbacks and receivers develop trust through countless repetitions, through film study together, through experiencing different defensive looks and coverage schemes together, through practicing in various situations together. You can't just flip a switch and create that in games. It has to be built over time through dedicated work and practice opportunities. Kevin Stefanski denied Shedeur Sanders that time, and now we're all watching the consequences unfold on Sundays. The media's attempts to get Sanders to explicitly criticize his coaches show how desperate they are for drama, but it also demonstrates how transparent Sanders' actual message is to anyone paying attention. He doesn't need to say Kevin Stefanski screwed me over directly, because every answer about insufficient practice time, inadequate reps, and missing chemistry makes it abundantly clear that he did. The fans know it, the media knows it, and most importantly, Kevin Stefanski knows it. Sanders just put his head coach on notice without being disrespectful, and that's a remarkable balancing act for someone so young and inexperienced with NFL media dynamics. The fact that Sanders had to call out a reporter for asking a disrespectful question about whether he liked the fourth down play calls demonstrates the tightrope he's walking with media engagement. The media wants controversy and headlines. They want drama and organizational conflict. Sanders understands that giving them what they want would only make his situation worse, so he's threading the needle, being honest about the challenges without providing direct quotes that could be weaponized against him or his coaches. It's smart, mature, and exactly how a franchise quarterback should handle these situations. But the underlying message is still devastating for Kevin Stefanski because it exposes how dishonest the quarterback competition narrative was. If there had truly been a competition, Sanders would have gotten first-team reps. If the evaluation process had been fair, he would have had opportunities to throw to Jeudy, Cedric Tillman, and Elijah Moore throughout training camp in the preseason. If the coaches were genuinely trying to identify the best quarterback, they would have given all candidates equal time and resources to prepare. None of that happened. Therefore, the competition was fake. The process was dishonest, and Stefanski never intended to give Sanders a legitimate shot. The consequences of that dishonesty will extend far beyond this season. The early years of a quarterback's career are the most critical for development. The habits, timing, and confidence established in those first few years can dramatically impact the entire trajectory of a career. By denying Sanders crucial development time during training camp and the early season, Stefanski may have damaged him for years to come. Young quarterbacks need positive experiences and opportunities to build confidence through success. They need to develop trust with their receivers in low-pressure practice environments before being required to execute in games. Sanders was denied all of that, and we can't yet know what the long-term impact will be. Browns fans watching this press conference should be demanding accountability from Kevin Stefanski and the coaching staff. Their rookie quarterback just told them, in the most diplomatic way possible, that he wasn't given the preparation and resources necessary to succeed. He explained that the offense's chemistry and timing problems are directly attributable to insufficient practice time and developmental opportunities. He exposed the quarterback competition as a sham, and he did all this while remaining respectful to his coaches, taking ownership of his own execution, and maintaining composure and professionalism throughout. That's franchise quarterback behavior. That's leadership. That's the kind of character and maturity you want in your quarterback. And it makes Kevin Stefanski's failure to support and develop this player even more inexcusable. When you have a quarterback this talented, mature, and intelligent about the game, and you actively prevent his development through bad coaching decisions and dishonest evaluation processes, you're committing the worst kind of organizational malpractice. Moving forward, Cleveland needs to make significant changes to how they're supporting Shedeur Sanders' development. First, he needs to be getting the overwhelming majority of first-team practice reps moving forward. No more splitting time. No more pretending there are viable alternatives. No more protecting Kevin Stefanski's ego by justifying past mistakes. Sanders is unquestionably the quarterback. Commit to him, give him everything he needs to succeed, and build around him. Second, the coaching staff needs to implement significantly more time for Sanders working with his receivers outside of team periods, individual route work, timing drills, situational throwing sessions, everything that helps quarterback and pass catchers develop familiarity and trust. That's how you get the time on task Sanders identified as missing. That's how you get everyone seeing things through the same lens. That's how you build a functional offense. Third, there needs to be accountability for the coaching staff's failures this season. Kevin Stefanski made a mistake by not giving Sanders a real opportunity during training camp. He was dishonest about how he handled the quarterback competition, and he's done a poor job facilitating the young quarterback's development. That needs to be acknowledged, lessons need to be learned, and changes need to be implemented to prevent it from happening again. And finally, the Browns need to surround Sanders with better offensive weapons and more reliable pass catchers. It's unacceptable that Jeudy leads the league in drops. It's unacceptable for receivers to not be where they're supposed to be on routes. And it's neither fair nor reasonable to expect a rookie quarterback to succeed when his supporting cast is letting him down. Cleveland needs to acquire legitimate number one receiving talent, upgrade the offensive line to provide better protection, and create the environment necessary for Sanders to become the quarterback he can become. What Shedeur Sanders did in that press conference was masterful. He told the truth about organizational failures without being disrespectful. He called out poor coaching decisions without providing direct quotes that would escalate the drama. He took ownership of execution while making it clear that Kevin Stefanski and the coaching staff are responsible for his lack of developmental opportunities. And he did it all with poise, maturity, and political awareness that many veteran players never develop. Cleveland Browns fans should be proud of how their young quarterback handled that press conference, but they should also be absolutely furious at the coaching staff for failing him so badly. They have a franchise quarterback worth building around. But that only matters if the organization is committed to supporting his development properly, providing adequate resources, and giving him every opportunity to succeed. Based on what Sanders revealed in his post-game comments, that hasn't happened yet. The question is whether Kevin Stefanski and the Browns organization will learn from these mistakes or continue repeating them. What do you think about Shedeur Sanders calling out the lack of practice time and preparation under Kevin Stefanski? Was he right to subtly expose the coaching staff's failures? Should the Browns fire Stefanski immediately for damaging their franchise quarterback's development? This is the kind of situation that demands honest conversation and real accountability.